Sometimes an avoidant comes back, and that is exactly what makes it confusing. Because if they did not care, why return? If they did not miss you, why reach out? If they were really done, why open the door again? This is where many people get trapped. They think the return means choice. They think the message means commitment. They think the softness means repair. But sometimes, the brutal truth is this: they came back because they missed access to you, not because they were ready to choose you differently. They missed your warmth. They missed your attention. They missed the way you understood them. They missed the emotional comfort of knowing you were there. They missed the familiar version of the bond where they could come close, feel wanted, receive care, and still avoid the responsibility of building something real. That is the part that hurts. They can come back and still not choose you. They can miss you and still not be ready to change. They can want your presence and still resist the relationship your presence deserves. Access means they want the comfort of you. Choice means they are willing to change the pattern that hurt you. And if you confuse access with choice, you can spend months or years believing every return is progress when it is really just the old door opening again. If this kind of clarity helps your nervous system settle, subscribe. PsychBond is a daily decoder for psychology, relationships, and avoidant and anxious attachment patterns, so you stop guessing. Now, let us go straight into why this happens. When an avoidant pulls away, they may feel relief at first. Not because you meant nothing, not because the connection was fake, but because the pressure of emotional closeness has dropped. The need to explain, define, answer, repair, or be consistent gets quieter. Their nervous system gets space. They feel less watched, less responsible, less emotionally cornered. But after distance creates relief, another feeling can come later. Familiarity starts calling. Loneliness gets louder. The softness they ran from becomes the softness they miss. The emotional home they could not stay inside becomes the emotional home they want to visit again. This is where the return often begins. Not from full readiness, not from a clear decision, not from a deep plan to rebuild. Sometimes it begins from a simple internal pull. I miss how they made me feel. I miss being known by them. I miss the comfort. I miss the access. But missing access is not the same as choosing a relationship. That distinction matters because anxious attachment often treats the return as proof. They came back, so I mattered. They texted, so they care. They showed warmth, so maybe this time will be different. And yes, the return may prove that something is still there. It may prove there is attachment, memory, longing, attraction, guilt, loneliness, or unfinished emotion. But it does not automatically prove choice. Choice is not a feeling that appears when someone is lonely. Choice is what someone does when closeness starts asking for honesty, repair, consistency, and a different way of showing up. This is why a return can feel so hopeful and still become painful again. The person may come back with emotion, but not with a new way of relating. They may come back with desire, but not with accountability. They may come back with tenderness, but not with the ability to hold a hard conversation. They may come back wanting the old warmth, while still avoiding the new bond that would protect both people from repeating the same wound. Old access is easy because it is familiar. They already know how to reach you. They know what tone softens you. They know what memory pulls you back. They know how much warmth is enough to reopen the door. They know you care. They know you understand them. They know you can see the wounded part behind their distance. And if you are anxiously attached, your nervous system may want to give them that access quickly because their return quiets the fear of being forgotten. The problem is that old access can restart the bond without repairing the break. It can create contact without clarity. It can create closeness without safety. It can make you feel chosen for a moment while nothing has actually changed in the pattern. This is where people lose themselves. They do not always lose themselves in one dramatic collapse. They lose themselves in small permissions. They answer the message too warmly because they do not want to scare them away. They avoid asking what changed because they do not want to ruin the reunion. They accept vague affection because clear commitment might push the avoidant back into distance. They tell themselves, "Let us just see where it goes," even though where it goes has already been shown by the old pattern. This is how old access returns. It does not always look like manipulation. Sometimes it looks like softness, a late-night message, a nostalgic joke, a check-in, a half apology, a warm memory, a sudden burst of attention, a little sign that they still feel something. And because you have been waiting for proof that you mattered, that little sign can feel huge. But the question is not only, do they feel something? The question is, what are they willing to do with what they feel? Because feeling without responsibility becomes access. Feeling with responsibility becomes choice. This is the line many people do not want to see because access can feel so close to love. Access says, "I want to talk to you again." Choice says, "I want to talk about what happened between us." Access says, "I miss your energy." Choice says, "I understand how my inconsistency affected your nervous system." Access says, "I still feel close to you." Choice says, "I am willing to act in a way that makes closeness safer this time." Access says, "Let us not make this heavy." Choice says, "We cannot build anything new if we keep avoiding the truth." That is the difference. Access wants the door open. Choice wants the pattern changed. Access wants the familiar comfort. Choice accepts the cost of repair. And when an avoidant wants access but not a new bond, they may unconsciously try to return to the part of the relationship that felt good for them while skipping the part that felt threatening. They want the warmth, not the conversation. The closeness, not the accountability. The emotional intimacy, not the label. The affection, not the expectation. The comfort, not the follow-through. The familiarity, not the commitment to do this differently. This is why the old dynamic can come back so fast. The moment you let them in without requiring a different level of honesty, the relationship slides into the old shape. They get to feel close again without facing the damage. You get relief again without getting safety. And both people may mistake the relief for progress. For the avoidant, old access can feel safe because it offers closeness without too much emotional demand. They can feel wanted without having to define what they are offering. They can receive your care without having to carry the full weight of what their return means. They can reconnect in a way that restores comfort, but still keep the bond flexible enough to exit if the pressure rises. That is not always calculated. Many avoidants are not sitting there thinking, "I will take what I want and give nothing back." More often, the body is looking for the part of intimacy it can tolerate, the part that feels warm, familiar, and non-threatening. But the part they can tolerate is not always enough for a real relationship. That is the painful point. Their capacity may stop at access, while your heart is hoping for choice. Their nervous system may want connection in small doses, while your nervous system is waiting for proof that the bond is becoming safe. And because anxious attachment is hungry for proof, even small doses can become powerful. A message can feel like a breakthrough. A kind tone can feel like a promise. A moment of softness can feel like the beginning of a new chapter. But if there is no new behavior after the warmth, it is not a new chapter. It is the same page reread with softer lighting. This is why you have to watch what happens after the first return. Not just the message, not just the apology, not just the emotional moment. Watch the pattern after access is restored. Do they become clearer, or do they become comfortable again? Do they talk about what happened, or do they move around it? Do they ask what you need, or do they assume your warmth means everything is fine? Do they repair, or do they simply re-enter? Re-entering is not the same as rebuilding. Re-entering means they found the door. Rebuilding means they respect the house. If they come back and expect the same access without earning a new level of trust, they are not choosing a new bond. They are returning to an old privilege. That word matters. Access to your emotional world is a privilege. Access to your time is a privilege. Access to your body, your care, your forgiveness, your listening, your softness, your steady presence, all of that is a privilege. And when someone has hurt you, disappeared, avoided responsibility, or kept you in emotional limbo, returning should not automatically restore every privilege they had before. That is not punishment. That is reality. Trust has to be rebuilt. Warmth has to be supported by honesty. A new bond cannot be built on the same old permission to avoid the truth. This is where the anxious person often struggles, because when they come back, you may feel so relieved that you want to show them the door is still open. You want to prove you were not angry. You want to make the reunion feel safe. You want to be kind, mature, understanding, soft. And there is nothing wrong with softness. But softness without standards becomes the exact doorway old access uses. You can be warm and still not hand them the whole house. You can be kind and still ask what changed. You can be loving and still notice whether they are choosing responsibility or only reaching for comfort. The old version of you may have made it easy for them to come back without explaining anything. The new version of you has to ask, what are you actually returning for? That question is not dramatic. It is necessary. Because if someone comes back only when they miss the emotional benefit of you, but disappears when the relationship requires effort, they are not choosing you. They are choosing access to the part of you that soothes them. They are choosing the comfort of being wanted. They are choosing the familiar relief of knowing you still care. But choice is different. Choice has a backbone. Choice can tolerate a hard conversation. Choice does not need you to erase your pain so they can feel comfortable. Choice does not ask for closeness while avoiding clarity. Choice does not return to your life and expect the old role without a new level of honesty. There is another layer here that matters. Old access often feels safer to an avoidant than a new bond because the old access has rules they already know. They know how much they can give before they feel pressure. They know how to pull back when the closeness starts feeling too real. They know how to keep things warm enough to stay emotionally connected, but vague enough to avoid being fully accountable. A new bond is different. A new bond means the old rules are not enough anymore. It means the silence has to be explained. It means the mixed signals cannot be treated like nothing. It means the person who was hurt gets to have a voice. It means the avoidant cannot only return to the enjoyable parts of you and leave the painful parts of the pattern untouched. That is why old access can be so tempting for them. It lets them feel the comfort of reunion without the discomfort of growth. It gives them the feeling of closeness without the vulnerability of real change. And for someone who fears being trapped, judged, needed, or exposed, that old access can feel like the perfect middle place. Not alone, but not fully responsible. Not gone, but not fully chosen. Not committed, but not completely without you. That middle place may calm them, but it can slowly destroy you. Because your body cannot rest inside a bond that keeps refusing to become clear. This is where the anxious person often starts negotiating against themselves. You may say, maybe I should not ask too much right away. Maybe I should give it time. Maybe if I keep things light, they will feel safe enough to choose me later. Maybe if I am calm, they will not run. Maybe if I do not mention the past, we can finally start fresh. Some patience can be healthy, but self-erasure is not patience. A fresh start that requires silence about the wound is not a fresh start. It is the old wound being covered with a nicer mood. And that is exactly why this pattern repeats. Nobody names the old wound. Nobody changes the old rule. Nobody admits that access was restored before trust was rebuilt. Then the relationship looks alive again from the outside, but inside your body, something is still waiting for the next disappearance. You can feel it. Even during the warm moments, there is a second layer of fear. You are laughing, but you are also checking. You are receiving affection, but you are also wondering how long it will last. You are grateful they came back, but part of you knows you are being asked to accept closeness without security. That is not peace. That is emotional probation. You are back in the bond, but you are still waiting to see whether the bond will punish you for needing anything. There are usually signs that someone wants access more than choice. The first sign is that they return with warmth but avoid the actual conversation. They want the emotional ease of being close again, but the moment you bring up what happened, the air changes. They get quiet. They joke. They deflect. They say they do not want to fight. They tell you not to ruin the moment. That tells you they may want the comfort of your presence more than the truth of your experience. The second sign is that they want your availability before they have rebuilt your safety. They want fast replies, emotional softness, attention, affection, maybe even intimacy, but they have not yet shown that they can handle your hurt with maturity. That is old access. The third sign is that they behave like returning should erase the impact. They may not say that directly, but the energy is there. Why are we still talking about this? Why can we not just move forward? Why are you making this heavy? But moving forward without repair is not growth. It is avoidance with better lighting. The fourth sign is that you start feeling responsible for keeping them close again. You start choosing your words carefully. You start hiding the part of you that is still hurt. You start trying to be the version of yourself they can tolerate. That is a major signal. If their return makes you less honest, it is not yet a new bond. It is old access asking you to become convenient again. The fifth sign is that the relationship feels good only when nothing is being asked of them. When there is no need, no conflict, no question, no future, no expectation, they can be warm. But the moment the relationship asks for clarity, their system pulls back. That means the bond is still dependent on low pressure, And a relationship that only works when your needs are hidden is not safe enough to build on. This is especially important with avoidant patterns because avoidants can genuinely want closeness and still fear the part of closeness that asks them to stay present. They can miss you and still avoid the conversation. They can feel guilty and still not know how to repair. They can want comfort and still panic when comfort becomes expectation. That is why you cannot measure the return only by emotion. Emotion is not enough. A person can feel a lot and still choose very little. A person can cry and still not change. A person can say they missed you and still avoid the question that matters. A person can act jealous, tender, nostalgic, and affected, and still not build a relationship that can hold you safely. That is the brutal truth. You do not need to deny their feelings to admit their behavior is not choosing you. Both can be true. They can care and still not choose. They can miss you and still not build. They can return and still not repair. This is why the title hurts. Because the return makes you think the story has shifted. It feels like movement. It feels like proof. It feels like the universe giving you another chance. But another chance is only meaningful if someone brings another way of relating. Otherwise, the relationship becomes a loop where absence creates pain, return creates relief, relief creates access, access removes pressure, and then nothing deeper changes. This is the access loop. They pull away, you hurt. They miss the comfort, they return, you soften. They receive access, the pressure drops, the hard conversation gets delayed, the bond feels warm again. Then the same fear returns and the same avoidance appears. The loop repeats because the return was never converted into choice. So what does choice look like? Choice looks like someone saying, I know I came back, but I also know coming back is not enough. Choice looks like someone asking, what did my distance do to you? Choice looks like someone being willing to hear the answer without becoming defensive. Choice looks like changed behavior after the reunion high fades. Choice looks like not using your compassion as a hiding place. Choice looks like clarity. Maybe not instant perfection, but a real willingness to make the relationship less confusing. Choice looks like someone who stops treating your heart like a place they can visit when they are lonely and leave when they feel overwhelmed. Choice looks like someone who understands that access to you now requires more honesty than access to you before. This does not mean you demand a perfect relationship overnight. It means you stop accepting the old arrangement as if nothing happened. The old arrangement was the place where they could get close without being clear, feel wanted without being steady, take comfort without repairing the wound. That arrangement hurt you. So if they come back into that same arrangement, you are not being chosen. You are being revisited. That is a painful word, but it is accurate. Being revisited feels good at first. It makes you feel remembered. It makes you feel missed. It makes you feel like the story is not over. But being revisited is not the same as being chosen. A person can revisit a place because it feels familiar, not because they are ready to live there differently. They can revisit you because you feel like home, while still refusing to become safe enough to build a home with. This is why you have to ask whether their return creates more truth or more confusion. If their return creates more truth, you will feel a different kind of steadiness. The conversation may be hard, but it will be clearer. The emotions may be tender, but the pattern will be addressed. You will not feel forced to become smaller just to keep them close. You will not feel like honesty is dangerous. You will not feel like their comfort depends on your silence. But if their return creates more confusion, your body will know. You will feel relief, then fear. Hope, then self-editing. Warmth, then anxiety. You will start wondering how much you can ask before they leave again. You will start protecting the reunion instead of protecting your peace. That is the sign they may want access more than a new bond. A new bond can hold truth. Old access needs you to forget. A new bond makes room for the pain that happened. Old access wants the comfort without the consequence. A new bond asks, how do we do this differently? Old access asks, can we just feel close again? That is the difference your nervous system has to learn. The return is not the answer. The reason for the return is the beginning of the answer. The behavior after the return is the evidence. And the pattern after access is restored is the truth. So what is the small practical check? When they come back, do not ask only, do they miss me? Ask, are they choosing anything different? Do not ask only, do they want me close? Ask, can they respect what closeness requires? Do not ask only, do they feel something? Ask, can they do something with what they feel besides returning to me for comfort? Do not ask only, did they reach out? Ask, did they reach out with accountability, clarity, and care for the impact they had? And most importantly, ask what happens inside you. Do you become more honest? Or do you start performing again? Do you feel safer? Or just temporarily wanted? Do you feel like the relationship is becoming clearer? Or do you feel like you are being pulled back into the same old fog with nicer words? Your body will often know before your hope admits it. If you feel yourself shrinking to keep the return, that is not choice. If you feel afraid to ask what changed, that is not safety. If you feel like you have to act grateful for access to someone who hurt you, that is not a new bond. You are allowed to want them back. You are allowed to feel relief when they return. You are allowed to miss them. But do not let the relief of being remembered make you forget the pain of not being chosen. Do not let their access to you become a substitute for their responsibility to you. Do not let a familiar return convince you that the relationship has changed when the pattern has not. The brutal truth is simple. They can come back and still not choose you. But your truth can be just as simple. They do not get the old access without a new level of honesty. If this helped your body feel a little safer, liking this video helps it reach someone else who needs this clarity. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.